It's time for a new formation guide. This is not only my favorite, most fun to play formation, no, I also believe that for me, this is the best formation I've ever played. Here comes Pepper. Welcome everybody! As usual, I will explain everything in great detail. Defensive patterns, offensive patterns, all players, all positions, weaknesses, sub-tactics, and of course show you in-game footage for you to see how it exactly works. Let's start with the core idea of this formation. Basically, I use only 3 defenders to have 7 players available not only to attack, but also to press as soon as the ball is lost. Since we're using quick counter, our nearby players will immediately press towards it as soon as the opponent has the ball. As we have 7 players for this, we will tighten the space so much that you can get interceptions far up the pitch. See how hard it is for my opponent to escape my pressing here. That's the key principle of this formation, making it as hard as possible for your opponent to make successful controlled passes. I've scored countless goals by overwhelming my opponents with pressing far up, leading to a bad pass that I could capitalize on. However, of course, at some point your opponent will be able to escape your pressing and attack. For this, we have the 3 defenders. As we play quick counter, the defensive line is very far up. Because of this, it is very important that your defenders are very fast, especially the outside ones. This not only allows you to win balls by being faster and making through balls a lot harder, it also allows you to defend aggressively to force the opponent to react. If you look here at this point, when the second player pressing doesn't get the ball, I can, without any risk, move towards the opponent, who now only has 2 choices without slowing his attack, and that's passing up or down, and either is an advantage for me. At this point already, the situation is pretty much over, because realistically, doing anything else than turning around is a high risk move. Even had my opponent turned around here already and kept possession, it would be a big win for me, because it would have given my team time to get behind the ball, which is all I want. Dribbling further against such a fast defender won't work. Another example is here. I again move towards my opponent to force an action, which is an obvious through ball here. Since my player is so fast, I can just turn around and collect the ball. Your main goal when defending is to stall your opponent to win time to have more of your players at the back. Having one player hover backwards while using second man press to pressure works pretty well. Just make sure to always have a defender ready for a potential through ball and use your other players to second man press. Only commit to the ball aggressively if there is no risk involved or you have no other choice. Most of the time, unless it's close to your goal, you defend passively. What you should never do in a situation like this is picking one of the players that's marking an opponent and run towards the ball carrier. Don't ever do this. If your opponent reacts fast enough, it's a free through ball. Look the way I move Wan-Bissaka to make sure a through ball is impossible. Then I do the same thing with Theo Hernandez. That's all I did. And now look how suddenly the attack went from quite a good start to having nobody to pass to. Now that we know that we need fast defenders with great defensive stats, what about the playstyles? I am using 3 fullbacks, meaning none of them have an activated playstyle. I've tested other playstyles for you though. I use Jimenez, a destroyer, and he was fine, especially in the center position. Don't use more than 1 though. I also use Theo Hernandez, an extra attacker, who also performed well. Just be careful with raising the attack mode, that might make him attack if he has the space. Build up is possible too, so you have quite many options even as a free player. Now what about attacking patterns? There are 2 special patterns I'd like to show you, but basically almost everything is possible here. Any way of attacking except for maybe excessive crossing, this formation supports it. You will score a lot of goals by making interceptions far up the pitch. Long direct balls are also no problem if that's what you prefer. Quick short passes are fine with this formation as well. But it doesn't always need to be fast. If you're more of a slow attacker that likes to wait for an opportunity, go for it. Now, about the first special pattern. If you play a long ball to one of your outside midfielders, this will cause your forward to fall back. If you then pass the ball to him, odds are your central midfielder is now in a prime position for a through ball. There's different variations to this, but it's always the same principle. The central midfielder position is very important in this formation. I'll talk more about it later. Let me explain why this works so well first. In this formation, a box-to-box CMF in quick counter will start his run as soon as the ball is somewhere around here on the way to your player. He is still running, but since he's a CMF, he gets marked pretty late because when he starts his run, he's too far away from the enemy goal to be marked. Even here, he's still not marked, but already managed to pick up quite some speed. Now, the center backs are busy marking my strikers, so I can make a long through ball to him. It's only now that the enemy's defense switches the marking, making this player here run with Bellingham and the other one moves to Neymar. That's too late though, Bellingham is too fast now. If you hit the ideal moment with this pass, you can always get a great chance. Now, a second pattern I'd like to show you is a quite simple attacking midfielder overlap. Your attacking midfielders will always try to overlap on the outside, and there are many different situations where this gives you a great passing opportunity. By the way, see who outsmarted the defender again. Box-to-box Bellingham. Let's move to the defensive midfielders. This is pretty simple. Their job is to win the ball, be it with interceptions or by pressuring opponents, or with fair tackles, or by winning aerial duels. If you're performing a slow attack and the space around the center of the box is not taken, your destroyer will move up there. You can use this to include him in your offensive play. There's one more very important thing about your DMFs, but I'll get to that in the weaknesses and sub-tactics chapter because it fits better there. Which playstyles to use for them? The combination I consider best is Anchorman plus Destroyer, but I've also played other variants. I used No Style Costa Curta next to Destroyer Vieira and it was fine. Same for box-to-box Zakaria. You might want to give anyone who's neither Anchorman nor Destroyer a defensive instruction. It doesn't do as much as with long ball counter, but I felt better with it. Let's move to the central midfielder, an absolute key position as you've already seen. He's making great runs through the middle, which put him in a great position to make an assist or score himself. As he is a box-to-box player, he will move into any space that's not taken. Here, he took the right side because Bernardo was too far back. Or here, when both Bernardo and Neymar are moving towards the middle, he will act as an option on the outside. Note how in this situation, my right attacking midfielder, whole player Maradona, takes the spot in the middle because Bellingham isn't there. This formation will always make sure that key possessions are occupied. Of course, the central midfielder also has defensive duties. He will help out to win balls at the back and also always try to find interceptions wherever he goes. The nominating contract CMF box-to-box Bellingham is made for this position in this formation. He has good defensive stats, which helps him when he supports your DMFs, which he has to do when your opponent is attacking. He is tall and has maximum leg length, which is amazing for interceptions. He also has very high stamina, allowing him to be everywhere. His speed, dribbling and finishing are more than sufficient for the special pattern I've shown you before. The speed also helps when chasing backwards. Enough praise, let's move to the attacking midfielders. You have already seen the overlap run they make, which is the most important thing, but you can also use them to initiate attacks if you pass to them earlier. If your forward moves outside, the attacking midfielder will move inside to be an option. They often have a good amount of space there to either pass to the forward or pass it to the middle to initiate an attack. They will always run forward while you're trying to attack, trying to find space to either be available for a pass, or like here, if the keeper doesn't catch the ball, be there to capitalize on it. Defensively, they will go all the way back if it's needed. Here you can see that even if the ball is on the other side, the attacking midfielder will come back. This is one reason why it's so important to slow down your opponent's attacks, as I've said in the beginning, because at some point all your midfielders will be back. The players I use most at this position are Bernardo Silva, who has no active play Playstyle, and the Pole, who is a whole player. I think that's what works best, but I've also used the creative playmakers Musiala and Foden, and they didn't feel any worse at all, so it should be fine as well. I would not use a classic number 10 unless you intentionally want to play more offensively, as these players won't help in defense. One reason why I like the Pole and Bernardo so much is because they're really good defensively, which helps not only at the back, but also when pressuring far up. But it's not a must. I've used Maradona, Musiala or Foden, all bad defensively, and while it does make a difference, it won't break the formation. Dribbling, passing and acceleration are important for this position, and speed is also welcome. Also, just like with the forwards, having left-footed players on the right side and vice versa is recommended. About the forwards, there isn't really anything specific to this formation. Use fast, agile dribblers with great finishing skills, like in other formations. I use a deep lying forward because I really like this style, and a no-style player, but goal poachers or a fox in the box are fine as well. Let's move to weaknesses and sub-tactics. Don't worry, the weaknesses aren't crucial. I just want to prepare you the best I can. If you know how to counter them, you'll be fine. The first one is if your opponent plays very fast, long balls and skips through your pressing players, including your midfield. As you can see here, you then have a massive gap between your midfield and your defenders, and your opponent has a window of opportunity where he is equal or sometimes even up in numbers. This happens because if you lose the ball, your DMFs will press towards the opponent, moving even further forward, creating this gap. Even using a defensive instruction will not solve this. There's one thing you can do to solve it though, and that is giving one of your DMFs, preferably the one that's better defensively, a deep line instruction. When losing the ball, this player will then not press, but immediately run back to move into your defensive line, which can put him into a great position between your lines where he does a great job covering the gap. Another thing this formation can be slightly disadvantaged against is wing play, but it depends on your opponent. What I usually do is I just feel out the opponent. After like 10 in-game minutes, you will know if you have to do something about it. If your opponent plays fast, long balls to his wingers, he might have too much space because the midfielders aren't back yet and the center backs won't move out as wide. If that is the case, you switch to this sub-tactic. To do this, you need one defensive midfielder to be able to play as a defender and one attacking midfielder to play as a central midfielder. Usually this shouldn't be a problem. Then instruct your outer defenders to man mark the opponent's wing forwards. That's it. You can keep quick counter, or if you prefer and have Southgate, switch to long ball counter. If you want to see how this sub-tactics exactly works, I've made a video about it explaining everything just like here. Now speaking of long ball counter, this is what we use to cover the last weakness I want to address, and that's competent possession players that like to play very wide. If a possession player is good enough to escape your pressing, then an important part of the formation is lost. You can still win, it would just be a lot easier with long ball counter. The reason is that with long ball counter, your players don't move forward and try to press, but will immediately pull back after you lose a ball. This means that the possession player has more space in the second third, but since the quick counter press didn't threaten him anyway, it doesn't matter. In the last third, however, you now have 8 players crowding a comparably small amount of space. This will make it a lot harder for the possession players to proceed or create a chance, and a lot easier for you to intercept. One thing you should know about this though is that if you try to launch a fast counterattack, it can happen that your player is almost completely alone up there. It would be good if you knew how to keep the ball, use the player model to block your opponent, and generally how to stay in possession until your players have moved up. That's it folks, I hope this formation guide helped you. Let me know if you liked this video. I'd love if you subscribed, liked or commented. Until then guys, take it easy. Shaka!